Hi, this is Molly from the CMS.Net Help Desk. I'm going to do a quick webinar today on some FYI on the PEDI. First off, this is April 2019, and we will be implementing a new message as of April 26, 2019. So when you send in your ESAR request, you're going to see a new message that appear. Basically, the message will read, ESAR transmission was successful. Please allow a processing time of at least 5 working days prior to inquiring about the status of your request. Do not send duplicate requests via fax. Your cooperation is appreciated. So that message was asked to be put in by the ESAR work group. The reason why it was asked to be put in is because some providers are sending in ESAR requests via the PEDI fillable form or maybe SOAP format, and then turns around and fax requests to them as well. This creates more work, duplicate requests, and confusion. Therefore, make sure to wait at least 5 days before contacting the counties to inquire about the request that you sent in. Okay? The next thing that I wanted to mention is we get a lot of requests at the help desk stating that you're trying to do an ESAR request and you're searching for the client and the client's not appearing even though the client is a known CCS or GHPP client. So I do want to remind you that PEDI is not an eligibility application. It is not an application for you to use to search for the client and see if the client has CCS or GHPP. PEDI is basically an application for you to view authorizations if you're a plan. Plan members that log into PEDI can only view clients that are enrolled in their plan. So if the client is not enrolled in our system in your plan, you will not be able to see the client. Now for provider domains, you will not be able to view the client if the client does not have any authorization issued to the provider in your domain. So basically, even if you have the client's SIN number or the client's case number and or the exact name, and you're searching for the client, you will not see the client appear on the search result list unless the client has an authorization at least to one of your providers in your domain. Okay? The next thing that I wanted to mention is system duplicate SAR rules. So we do have a duplicate SAR rules where the system currently will treat the scenario where if you're using the same client, if you're putting in a SAR request for the same client, same provider, and the exact same date of service, which means the exact same service begin date and end date, the system will treat it as a duplicate request if there is already an existing awaiting service request available in PEDI. It will auto-delete the prior and replace it with a new one. So let me go ahead and show you the first example of what the 5-day message looks like. So I do see, you can see the screenshot right here, but I also wanted to show you so I have a form here that I've already created and I'm about to submit. So I'm going to go ahead and click submit. So the moment that you submit, that's when the message appears. So you'll see the message here and also the SAR temporary number. Okay? So that's basically an example of the 5-day message that the ESAR work group had came up with. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and click close, and it's going to take me back to the search results list of SARs for the client that I selected. So the next thing I wanted to mention is so I'm going to go ahead and skip to discussing about the duplicate rules. So I did mention the second issue that I wanted to talk about, which was the client not found on the search result, and I'll go back to that in a little bit. So I'll jump to the system duplicate rules for now. So as I mentioned here, I wanted to show you an example. So I have an example here that earlier I had put in a request for a test client that I had created, and I had chose the provider as Aaron Smith, and my date of service was for April 22nd to April 26, 2019. And later on, I put in the exact same request. Although the service was different, the system still treated it as a duplicate. So I wanted to go in and show you this one that was deleted. So as you can see here, the one that was deleted The service begin date, like I mentioned, is on the 22nd, and the end date is the 26th. The code that I had put in was 00070. Now, the system I had put in my new request. I chose the same client. It was the same provider. We need the same NPI. The date, the service begin date and the service end date was the same, but even though my service code was different, the system still treated it as a duplicate, and it deleted this request. And if you see the user rejection text right here, that reads out, a new request was successfully created to overwrite this request. Therefore, this request is auto-deleted as input error by system. That means it was done by your action due to the scenario that I mentioned. Okay, so whenever you see this blurb, the system auto-deleted and awaiting service request. And here's the example of the new one that got replaced. So like I mentioned, it's the same provider, same client, same begin date, same end date, but my service code, even though it was different, the system actually treated it as a duplicate request and deleted my prior one and replaced it with this new one. So if you do not want the system to auto-delete the prior one, meaning you, let's say for example, the first one you had sent in a service code of 00070, and the next one you needed to send in a request is for the same client, same client, same provider, but different service code. In order for the system to not delete it, make sure you don't put the same date of service. So make the end date a little bit different or something like that. So you can put in the request here. For example, you can, let's go ahead and I'm just going to show you an example. So I'm going to put in a new request for the same client, and I'm going to choose the same provider. I'm going to choose the same date of service, but I'm going to just make sure your end date is different. And then you can put in your comment here and say service end date requesting is for 26/19, okay? And then your code, when you add your code, you can put in your different code that you want and the units and Molly. And with the April change cycle, if you want to put in your email address, you can go ahead and do so. That's a new field that we just added. And this field right here, the name of contact person for this request. If it's not you, make sure to put that person's name and phone number. Okay? And then, of course, if you have attachment, you can browse and then make sure you click on Add to the list to make the attachment really get added, or else it won't get added. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and click on Submit, and oops, well, I guess it doesn't like that, so I'm just going to put 04/26/19, okay? And there's a successful message, and there's my new request that I just put in, and it did not auto-delete my old one, as you can see. So that's basically how to avoid the auto-deletion until we change the duplicate rules in the system, okay? And like I've mentioned before, if you're doing a client search, and you know the client is an established CCS client, but for whatever reason, when you search for the client, it gets no record found. That means the client has never been seen by your provider, so there's no record found. So you have to put in a SAR request, just click on Request New ESAR, and just make sure you identify whether it's CCS and GHPP, and make sure that you get the SIN number and the date of birth correct, because the system, what it does after you put in your request, it will check and make sure that, okay, this SIN number is found and it does match with the correct date of service. The correct date of birth, and so it will link to the client in the CMS net. Okay, so if you don't know the SIN, just put 00 for the SIN and make sure you put the correct case number. As long as you have the correct case number and the date of birth, the system will link to the right client, even though maybe you got the last name correct, but you might have forgot the middle name. And the system will make sure that if it's the same case number, correct date of birth, it will link to the right client, even though you may have misspelled the first name or the last name or something like that. Okay? So that's all I wanted to give an FYI about for today.